Welcome to the Shabbat Channel, a taste of CSAIR in your inbox. We wish that we could be with you in person, but for now we think this is the next best thing. So check out this week's episode for music from an amazing artist and Torah from our own CSAIR community. For now, you'll have to supply the Kiddush. Shabbat Shalom.
My mother made challah every Shabbat. We lived in a small town, about 3-hour drive from Toronto, and there was no kosher bread to be found in Kingston. There was so much going on in our house. I'm one of 5 children, so the challah, everything was kind of put aside when the challah was started. But once it was sitting to let rise, there was a lot of tumult around afterwards. But the smell of challah every week in the house is just an amazing memory and an amazing experience. So we're going to start off with some yeast. So this is a tablespoon of active yeast, and along with a tablespoon of sugar. I'm just going to put it in a bowl which has 2 1/4 cups warm water. Just spreading it out so I'll let that sit for a couple of minutes until I see it activating. You can see the yeast activating. It's coming alive.
How do you fit challah making into work?
Well, it actually depends on how early Shabbat comes in. During the summer, I might start making on Friday morning, but in the winter months, I'll make the dough on Thursday afternoon after I come home from work. Or after it's made, I'll then put it in the fridge overnight, and so Friday I then will finish off the braiding, forming, and baking of the challah. I'm going to add the egg and oil. It was 2 eggs and 3/4 cups of oil. And then to that, I'm also going to add, this is a cup of sugar. It's actually just less than a cup, but a cup of sugar. And then mix. Once I mix this up a little bit, I'll start adding the different flours I use. I usually start off, just to be healthy, with a little bit of flaxseed. I don't usually use measurements. I just kind of pour and see what feels good. And I also like to add oatmeal. And then once this is mixed, I'll start adding the regular flours that I use. So bread flour is best for baking breads. It's about the gluten content. It's a higher gluten flour. So I'll add like 1 cup at a time approximately, just to get it all incorporated in before I add the next, because when you add too much flour, sometimes it can get dry. And this is white whole wheat flour, which also gives it a little, I guess, more healthy, more fiber aspect to the challah. Usually end up using about 1/3 to 1/2 of the white whole wheat, and the rest is the white bread flour. Watching my mother and my grandmother, they never used a spoon. They did the whole thing with their hands, which I used to do because that was the only thing I knew until I watched Judy Matthews make challah and she used a spoon. I thought, wow, that actually looks kind of good. Okay, now it's time to get your hands dirty. So it shouldn't be sticky. Like a good piece of Play-Doh, actually. Just lightly flour the board. For anybody who does CPR, this is the closest thing to CPR and the muscles you need for it. Knead until it becomes a good ball and consistency, and then I'll knead it for another 5 or 10 minutes. The dough has now risen twice, once for 2 hours and another time for 1 hour, covered. And now we're gonna shape the challah. Enjoy getting your hands dirty. Enjoy playing around with the different ingredients. Enjoy forming the challahs. Doesn't need to look perfectly. Just enjoy the time. So I learned to make challah from my mother, who made challah every week. And she learned to make challah from her mother, who also made challah every week. My grandmother, Boo Boo, started making challah as a very young child in Poland, in her shtetl in Plunch. She lived through a lot in Plunge and came to Canada as a young woman, where she met my grandfather, who had come from Poland a few years before my grandmother after surviving the last pandemic, where he lost his whole family. They met in Canada, they married, and then subsequently my grandmother lost her whole family in the Holocaust.
What do you hope people experience during Shabbat across CSAIR?
A little bit of that feeling of community, of knowing that everyone is doing what we're doing right now, maybe not at the same table, but knowing that we're all partaking in Shabbat in the same way. So many things have changed because of this pandemic, from not allowing people into our homes, not going into other people's homes. And this has been something that's it's when what Shabbat comes, Shabbat is still Shabbat, and the challah on the table is still the same challah on the table.
Simcha tetzeu uv'shalom tuvalu ki v'simcha tetzeu uv'shalom tuvalu ki v'simcha tetzeu